Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. My name is Matthew, and today we're taking a look pretty much at two NECA Godzillas. Another figure comparison for y'all. This side we've got the NECA Shin Godzilla, the bootleg version, unfortunately, because I cannot track down an actual version for a good price, so I benefited for the bootleg, and it's a very good quality bootleg. It is very on par with what I've seen from the original, and that's why we're going to be comparing it to an original NECA Godzilla, the Atomic Blast variant that I got back in 2017, I believe. I think I got this guy in 2017. So, already a few years old. it's definitely stood the test of time. But as a result, I have compared these guys before in a video, not specifically about them, but specifically about this guy, and then did a size comparison. But I wanted to go ahead and push the envelope a little more. Let's see the main differences between this guy and this guy, because there's quite a bit, but also quite a bit of similarities. So, with that being said, we have another multi-rounder, sculpt and paint, articulation, size, accessories, price, availability, and packaging. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get on with the video. Starting off with the sculpt and paint, I have to honestly say that yes, the heads are actually pretty similar. And the only real difference is really the teeth paint, because well, okay, as far as like the quality is concerned, but let's pretty much address the elephant in the room, the eyes. These guys, I hate saying this, but I think the bootleg did a better job with the eyes than the NECA original did, because the eye placement isn't, it's not far off, but it's pretty off, because like even going to this side looks kind of fine. This one, it's like all the way forward. It's almost like, does anyone know the Jack specific 12-inch Godzilla where they like had the eye prints like forward on the promo pics? That's basically what we have here, except this was like 2 years before. But as for the bootleg, it's actually got the eye placement pretty much spot on. Like, I'm actually kind of shocked that they're not like any more back, any more forward, up, or down. Um, and even like the red wash on both of them, it looks rather similar. Like even just like it's got a bit more like sporadic red, like here, 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 and here. While on the bootleg, it's a bit more like consistent as far as like the mix is concerned. So that's more of what I personally like to see. Even just like the quality of the teeth paint. However, I have to honestly give it to the original NECA because they've got a bit more like consistency, like with the teeth paint. Well, there is some mild consistency, but come on, it's just slapped on. There's no like consistency. Yeah, I know the jaw's floppy, but we'll get to that when we talk about posability. The mouth membrane, whatever you want to call it, I know it was like this on the original, but the Atomic Blast one just does it so much better. Like, you open this, this looks like a certain part of the body that I'm not really supposed to mention on a channel marked for kids, but this one actually looks like what it did in the film, minus this big peg hole, and actually looks really good. So, also, it kind of doesn't help that this guy has some black showing. I know this one has a bit of black, but this one has like the straight up black showing, and then you have like some pink, and then you have some like red for the membrane. So it doesn't really help, but at the same time, the quality is surprisingly well on the bootleg in comparison. Next up, let's go ahead and talk about the bodies. And again, it's really, really comparable. I will say that I do prefer the Atomic Blast's more finished look, because it actually looks a bit more matte as opposed to this one being much more glossy. And even though there was like a big theme with NECA Godzillas for a while being like as shiny as pure possible, almost like they came out of it, came out of the water. NECA was like, stop there, I'm going to use you as reference, and then just call it a day. It's just something about this just looks a lot better. However, what I'm not really a huge fan of is the way that like the neck is painted, because it's just kind of caked on and it doesn't really have much substance to it. While here, it's actually, even though the paint application isn't really necessarily the best, kind of like coming up here, it's got like a bit more subtlety than this. That's actually kind of what I prefer. minus that tiny little piece of excess plastic there. I mean, it's a bootleg, what you expect. But I also like how both of them feature the reds in the crevices, and even like the red is so uneven, but yet it looks even. It's hard to explain. It's chaotic, but in like a controlled, schemed way, if that makes any sort of logical sense. But even like down to the hands, where yeah, it's obviously clear that this one has a bit more paint than this one does. They look fine, and I'm glad that I didn't get the bootleg where it's like more relaxed as opposed to like it being where it doesn't look like it's just a normal Godzilla. This is Shin Godzilla we're talking about. But again, the red wash does carry pretty well through even like in the abdomen region. And you do get a bit more of like the red kind of going through the folds on this one and a bit more with this one. And the legs on the original kind of tame it a little bit. Even though, again, it is a bootleg, the original probably did more something like what this guy did. However, what's something that's kind of obviously different, we're just going to kind of look at these claws, is the quality of the leg paint. Well, the claw paint. You can kind of see that the Atomic Blast version of the original has a bit more shading versus this one where it's a little hard to notice because of like all the lights I have going. There is shading. You can kind of see it on this one, but it's not as noticeable and it's mainly just one color versus this one where it's actually a bit more of a dull like kind of I don't know how to say yellow yellow nail, whatever, yellow fingernail. Next, we're going to take a look at the tails on both figures, which the bootleg, actually, funny enough, even though this is the original Shin Godzilla as a bootleg, it's funny because they used the Atomic Blast Shin Godzilla tail on this one as a base and just applied the paint scheme of the original to this one. And if you need proof and evidence, this is in articulation, but or the accessories, but this one has a hole for the beam that you should know by now, while this one also has the hole for the beam. Pretty interesting, because the original one didn't. But back to the task at hand. You can kind of see that this one has a bit more of the kind of like consistency as far as the sheer color is concerned. Even though it kind of loses that bit here, you can definitely see like the red just looks a lot better than it is on here, where it just kind of looks a little washed. And even though both of them are different colors, even though this one also does carry over the infamous little Cheeto chunks as the original did, this one just looks a lot better just as far as like the sheer quality. Again, I know it's the original, but there's something about this that I just prefer over this. Also, not much paint in the way of like the red on the spines, which perfectly segues into the next or final category of this little part is the spines. And again, I've said it before, these are actually smaller than this. Again, I know they shrink down the mold every time they use it, but it just looks a bit, well, okay, how does this? As far as the glowing effect is concerned, I'm gotta say the bootleg pulls it off better than the original one does. Why? This doesn't really look like it's glowing. I know, the white to purple. It looks like it's glowing and it's about to go off like a bomb, literally. But this actually kind of looks more like what a glow would do. It doesn't highlight everything at first, but then as it gets brighter, it kind of illuminates the whole thing and leaves only like a little bit here. However, I think this is more of a paint issue rather than an intentional thing. But I mean, hey, this is not bad in the slightest. Even though mine still got a bent dorsal plate all these years, it's kind of like a mixture of purple and pink and white. So, as for which one I think is done better, spines, mold-wise this one, paint-wise that one. So overall, for sculpt and paint, I have to give the bootleg some credit because, well, no, let me backtrack. I have to give this guy some serious credit. Like, he is, in my opinion, the best. I could be just biased, but he is the best bootleg Shin Godzilla out there, at least that I've seen in my travels online, because he really has, like, as far as paint issues, really only the tail. Sure, it's an overall downgrade from the original, but I can't afford the original, sadly, and that feels weird to say about a NECA Godzilla. like this thing looks great. It looks awesome. And even like a little bit of more customization, because I'm not a customizer and I'm not gonna attempt to customize this thing, it would look great. Like perfect. That being said, sculpt and paint, I will say this guy does it a little better. I say a little bit because there are some things like the eyes and the spine paint that kind of hold it a little back, especially like the purple down here. But again, overall speaking, this guy has the better quality, but this guy is just barely there.